Today is Saturday, August 21st. The chaos and questions in Kabul and around Afghanistan continue after the Taliban took control of the country with surprising speed earlier this week. Thousands of Americans, as well as Afghans who helped the U.S. and its allies, are now scrambling to get out, fearing for their futures under Taliban rule. So today, we're talking with a retired U.S. Army colonel who has commanded combat troops in Afghanistan and still knows plenty of people on the ground there. Mike Jason spent more than 2 decades in the U.S. Army before retiring in 2019. He joins me to share his reaction to the Taliban takeover, how he believes this happened, and what he thinks America's obligation is now. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, when we provide all the day's news in just 10 minutes. It's fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. It's time for today's Special Edition Saturday. You ready? Let's do this. Retired Army Colonel Mike Jason, thank you for coming on the Newsworthy.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here to talk to you and your audience.
So first, just briefly describe for us what it's been like for you watching Afghanistan come back under Taliban control.
It's just been disjointing, horrifying, humiliating, sad, maddening. I mean, all the range of emotions. For me, 2 decades of being involved and being in the Army, since 9/11. That's the case for a lot of us. But at the same time, before we could even start to reflect or think about it, we were faced with a humanitarian and really a real life crisis to people that we know, served with or fought with or friends. There was almost an immediate shift of focus and attention to where to put our energies.
Yeah, I know you've been in contact with people who are still there in Afghanistan. You've talked with Gold Star families. What have those conversations and messages been like?
They're all over the map. I heard a friend of mine, he's like, there's a digital Dunkirk going on. And literally that's what it feels like. All of us, my peers, like my friends, my former soldiers. And it's not just military, because we've had non-governmental agencies there. The press had huge bureaus for years. So we all have people on the ground. It's a rush to parse through the chaos and understand what's happening, what the communications are, what's the way out, what's truth, what's not truth, who's safe, what the processes are, just sifting through kind of the confusion, because it all happened just so quickly, right? And really to help those people. And then with Gold Star families, that's just a rash of emotions. How do you even begin to contextualize that? And so first is just sort of checking in and just letting them know that you're thinking about them, they're heard, and there's different takes to it. They're frustrated, or others resigned to it, or in many ways it's hard to put into words.
I think I've heard you say that some are asking, was any of this worthwhile? Is that a feeling that you're hearing?
I mean, there is a bit of that calculus, or that question being banted around. But for me and some very close colleagues, it was like, this is not about us. I mean, we made it out, we survived, we came back. We're the lucky ones, but there's a real life crisis on the ground. We can't right now wallow in self-pity and try to figure all this out where there's a real life crisis. That time will come. I did see something, it was hopeful, and it was an Afghan citizen who's back in the U.S. now. He wrote like an open letter on social media to military members, and he said, of course, what you did was worth it. And he talked about somebody who had gone to medical school, a woman who would have never been able to do that. And he said, if you're a doctor and you operated on a cancer patient and you extended their lives for 20 years, you can't consider that a waste of time. That's probably the most hopeful thing I've seen in the last week or so.
President Biden has said in some cases Afghan forces gave up without trying to fight, that they couldn't be given the will to fight. Does that surprise you, or what was your reaction to that?
To the core of the question is 60,000 Afghan security forces have given their lives for this experiment since 2001. Though there's all kinds of things we can point the fingers to include what we did wrong as U.S. military or NATO, we can't say that they didn't put their skin in the game. We've been withdrawing troops now for several years. An agreement was reached in Doha a year and a half ago that basically conceded that the Taliban was not going to interfere with foreign forces and American troops in exchange for kind of this withdrawal that was set, I think, originally for May of 21. What we're hearing is that was a huge demoralizing blow to Afghan security forces. They saw that the exit was up and firm. It was a crushing blow to their morale and spirit. And what we're starting to see, and it's coming out now, the Taliban immediately took that space and started making deals with commanders and governors and leaders and basically saying, we told you we were going to be back. We told you they were leaving. Now, if you agree not to fight, we won't kill you all, or we won't attack you. When they had a year and a half to kind of plow this ground, I don't know who knew this. I didn't. I've been retired. But clearly we saw that take shape when, within a week or two, basically all the cities fall without significant fighting. And I think that's how it's probably going to get played out in the history books.
And do you believe the Taliban when they say they'll be more tolerant and not punish those who helped the U.S. and its allies?
I don't believe the Taliban in any way. They haven't earned anybody's trust ever. However, I think anybody who thinks they can predict what's going to happen in Afghanistan is delusional. It's just a complex, very nuanced system and set of norms. You have multiple languages, multiple civilizations coming together. I mean, it's just its own place. Having said that, the Taliban ruled for about 4 or 5 years before 9/11, and it was kind of a disaster over there. They took over a country after 20 years of civil war and a jihad against the Soviet invaders, if you will. And what they inherited was a country in complete rubble, where the Taliban were the only people that stepped in, that stopped all these warlords and civil war and started feeding people and providing some security and measure of predictability. Now, it was harsh, it was tyrannical, it was awful, but it was just rubble. What the Taliban are taking over now, after 20 years, are 35 million people in big cities with internet, electricity, running water, universities, and 75% of the population with a smartphone. It's not the same. The Mujahideen are coming down from the mountains where they've been up there, doing campfires and being guerrillas. And now they have to govern people, millions of people, and deal with the international community and all of that. I think the rules have changed for them. I think they want legitimacy. Look, the jury's out. They're not going to be who we wanted them to be. But I think it's not a return to pre-9/11. I think it's a whole new book. And I think we still have a foreign policy. The international community has leverage and tools to help shape this thing. We shouldn't just throw our hands up.
Still coming up, Colonel Mike Jason explains what he thinks are the biggest misconceptions Americans have about Afghanistan and what we can learn from the war effort there. But first, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Whether you're dealing with parenting for the first time, like I am, or you're feeling anxious, lonely, having trouble sleeping, or you're stressed about your job, or maybe you simply are just not as happy as you know you could be, then check out BetterHelp. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You'll never have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room because it's all through a safe and private online environment. It's even more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. So BetterHelp makes professional counseling more accessible and convenient. And of course, it's always confidential. You can start communicating in less than 24 hours. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Join more than 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, go to BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. This episode is also brought to you by Rothy's. Let's start with the research. Rothy's surveyed thousands of customers, and the number one word used to describe their shoes is comfy. And yes, I would agree, Rothy's are stylish, they're sustainable, and they are actually comfortable. I used to dread wearing shoes for the first time, but with Rothy's, you never have to break them in. Instead, Rothy's shoes are comfortable and easy to wear right out of the box. I remember getting my first pair and being super impressed. And years later, I'm still wearing them. No wonder Pop Sugar named Rothy's one of the, quote, most comfortable and cute flats you'll never tire of wearing. And just like my shoes, Rothy's newly launched men's shoes have been tested to make sure they have the perfect fit, wash after wash. So step up your summer wardrobe with washable, sustainable, stylish shoes and bags from Rothy's. Head to rothys.com/newsworthy to find your new warm weather favorites today. That's Rothys, R-O-T-H-Y-S, rothys.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to my conversation with retired Army Colonel Mike Jason. So what do you think is America's obligation at this point?
I think we have a moral obligation to get our friends and allies out if they want to get out. I think many of them are in mortal danger, and their families. That should be right now. That's our number one focus. That's our number one effort. We've got dual Afghan American citizens over there. We've got our former interpreters. We've got senior leaders in Afghan security forces. We've got journalists from bureaus, whether it's the Times or the BBC or whatever, from other countries, people that work for NGOs and humanitarian agencies that are in grave danger. We must get them out, as many as possible, and throw the doors open and welcome them, especially in this country, and encourage our allies and partners to do the same.
What do you think that Americans don't understand about Afghanistan, or maybe the biggest misconception or message to them as we start to deal with what you just talked about?
The misconception is we don't really know, why were we there? Why did we stay? Was it post 9/11? What were we trying to do? It's easy to say, oh, our soldiers are out there fighting for freedom and put us on a pedestal. But there were a million reasons and they kept changing in a million different directions. And we didn't vigorously debate it. And now all of a sudden we're seeing people falling off airplanes and wondering what the heck happened. We need to take that away. This is now a national obligation. It's all of us. And we have a role in welcoming these people. We have a role in really expanding the debate about where we fight and why in the future. We have veterans to take care of, and we have an international community and an international faith to restore for years to come. So I think the biggest misconception is this is somebody else's war. It is all of us. All of us, who's to blame? There's finger pointing everywhere right now. My old sergeant used to say, whenever you blame somebody, there's one finger pointing, right? And there's three pointing right back at you. This is all of us. And I think that's the biggest misconception. And when we get that and we accept that, I think we can move forward and try and fix what we can.
Some have called the Taliban taking over again as a worst case scenario. I know you've said that it's not. So tell us, what do you think is a worst case scenario?
This airfield could easily be threatened by the forces on the ground there, and our evacuation could be threatened. I mean, there's many worst case scenarios. Hostages. We are not there yet. Right now, it's a delicate balance. We know that there's crosstalk and negotiations. We want to get all of our people out and definitely as many Afghans as possible. That helped us. The Taliban got what they wanted. We're doing, call it our walk of shame, whatever. But there's a tenuous kind of agreement that this is continuing right now unhindered. We have not reached a worst case scenario. Nobody expected this thing to collapse so quickly. We're going to learn why in the coming months and years. But we have now reached kind of a delicate stability of this operation. And there's real professionals on the ground, General Donahue and all those guys making it happen, and our allies. And we just need to be patient and get as many people out as we can. And it can get a lot worse very fast.
Final thought for our audience.
There'll be time for finger pointing and recriminations. All of us were here. All of us are responsible. We voted. We participated. There'll be plenty of time to study this in great detail. But right now, there's real human suffering. We all need to come together. We need to get as many people out as we can, welcome them, and then really take a look and figure out what kind of wars we're going to fight, when, why, and how we as a country participate in a vigorous national debate. Because everything that's done, every casualty, is really in our name as citizens and voters.
Well, thank you to retired Army Colonel Mike Jason for sharing his insights and perspective. On next week's Special Edition Saturday, a part 2 on this developing situation in Afghanistan. We'll discuss what the future may look like for women in the country now. Until then, we'll be keeping you updated on this story and all the news each day with our regular 10-minute news roundups every Monday through Friday, right here on the Newsworthy Podcast. For now, have a great weekend.